Hello, my name is Mihai Vince. I'm a designer of Days of Ire, Budapest 1956, and I will explain the rules to you. When you've laid out the board on the table, take the 3 of these glass bead markers and place the first one on the calendar on the first spot saying October 23rd. Then place one on the morale track on the edge of the board on the underlined 2 and place the last one on the support track nearby on the underlined 4. Then take the fighter tiles. These tiles have 3 revolutionary tanks in them. They look like this. Separate these 3 and place the rest of them on the board on several locations. On each location, place 2 face down. And then flip the top one and place an inactive marker on it. Do it for all locations. Then take 4 of the militia tokens, place 1 on Sena Square, 2 on Stalin Square, and 1 on Chapel. Take 3 of the sniper tokens, place 1 on Kossuth Square, 1 on the radio, and 1 on HWPP headquarters. Take 2 of the Soviet tanks, place 1 on the radio and 1 on Kossuth Square. Then take the starting event cards, place them on the respective locations. Petőfi Circle organizes protest on BAM statue. Civilians armed in Corvin Passage, on Corvin Passage, and students' demands at the University of Technology. Place the events on the left side of each location box. Then, depending on the player number, place your pawns on the board. If playing with 1 player, place it on the University of Technology. If playing with 2 players, place one on the University and the other on BAM statue. If playing with 3 players, place the 3rd on Corvin Passage, and if playing with 4 revolutionary players, place the 4th on University of Technology. Then, shuffle the revolutionary cards and deal 5 to each player's hand. Now you're ready to set up the Soviet side. If playing with the conflict rule set for 2 to 4 players, you will need 3 decks of headline cards. The first one, the headline cards look like this, and the first back is red, and it has 1 day of the revolution on it. The second is this black one, Armed Uprising, and it's a headline deck. And the third one is 3, The Turning Tide, and yeah, it's a headline deck too. So you'll need to shuffle all of these, place them next to the board, and take 4 from the first deck and deal it to the Soviet player's hand. Now, you will also need the State Protection Authority cards. There's 8 of it, exactly, and place it in a card pool, meaning they're all face up, public for everyone, and available to play. Then, set up the event cards. Separate the event deck into 4 piles. The first pile has a red 1 on the bottom right corner. take those out. The second pile should have a black 2 on the right corner. And the third should have a green 3 on the corner. The last one should have a blue X on the corner. Now, take 3 from the X deck and shuffle it into the first deck. Then, take 4 from the X deck and shuffle it into the second deck. Notice that there's 4 X cards left, and I messed up, so I think there should be one here. There should be 4 left. And then take the piles on top of each other. Start with the X, it will be on the bottom. The number 3 will be on top of it. The number 2 with some X cards in it will be on top. And the number 1 with also some X cards will be on the top of the whole deck. This will be your event deck. Going to the conflict rule set, the Soviet phase, the first phase in each day, has 5 steps. First, the Soviet player plays the headline cards he has in his hands. All these cards can be red or green. The red cards have an effect that is good for the Soviet player. The green ones have an effect that is good for the revolutionary players. The Soviet can play as many of these cards from his hand as he wants. But he has to consider that if he plays a red card, he can either play it for the effect or for the command points it has on it. If he plays a green card, he gets the command points for it, but he also has to execute the effect. Furthermore, it's the revolutionary players who actually execute the effect, so it's even better for them. So, why play these cards? Well, the Soviet player will need these command points indicated on the top left corner to place events on the board. So what he does now is, he plays these red headline cards. His red headline card for the 1 point. So place it on here. And he plays this green card for both the point and the effect. He plays this this red card for the effect, which says place 1 Soviet tank anywhere with a Soviet tank. So he does that, he places a Soviet tank, and then he discards this card because the effect is done and he doesn't gather command points from it. There are also icons on the card on the bottom of them, which he has to consider. If he plays a card for effect, which means the red he chooses the effect, and for the green he chooses both ones, the icons must be executed. First, if there is an SPA icon, he can retrieve SPA cards, which I will tell you about later. If there's this resolution icon, he has to take a resolution icon with the same title as the card. So this one, for example, says Zhukov orders entry into Budapest. Georgy Zhukov, and this is the same one. Georgy Zhukov orders entry into Budapest, and place this resolution marker on the ashtray on the board as a reminder that this headline have happened. And then discard the card. So what do the Soviet player have now? From the gathered command points, he can buy events. The event market is on the other side of the board. He can buy 6 of these events if he has the command points for it. And let me show you how much they cost. Most of the events, the major events, have a price on the corner. This one costs 2. So this is exactly 2 command points to buy. This one is, for example, 3. And there's a special one. The minor events have a cost of X. It means that the base cost of it is exactly the number of these minor event cards on the board. So right now, there is no minor event on the board. So to place this, it costs 0. But the second one, there's another X. It will cost 1, because there's already a card on the board with an X price. So from these command points, the Soviet player can buy these, but the prices also increase. The first 2 slots in the market add 0 command points to the price. The second 2 slots add 1 command point to the price. So if this one costs 3, the Stalin statue one, it will cost 4 for the Soviet player. And the last 2 slots add 2 to the price. Even if it's an X event, the cost is increased. And then, if the Soviet commander have command points remaining, he can add tanks to the board. So let's assume that he went really cheap and he bought this X event with 0 extra price on Kossuth Square, which actually cost him nothing. And then wants to get more tanks. For 1 command point, he can move a tank to an adjacent location, like this. For 3 command points, he can place a new tank to a reinforcement location on the board, which has a red star in the right corner. So these 3 are the reinforcement locations. And he can place 1, for example, on Chepel for 3 points. Let's assume he did that. And now he's out of command points. Any command points, access command points, are lost at that stage. He discards a card. No, actually, wait. He did keep 1 card in his hand. And that's important, because in the next phase, he have to draw more headline cards. So he discarded his 3. 1 is remaining in his hand. And then he must draw a number of cards to fill up his hand exactly to the support, the number on the support, which is right now is 4. So the Soviet draws 3 cards to fill up his hand. And on the first turn, the first day, he has to draw from the red deck. On the second, he has to draw from the red or the white, the black one or whitish. He can decide. And then on the third is the second, the black deck. And on the fifth, he can decide if the green or the black. And then the last one. On the last turn, he doesn't draw headline cards, because he can't play it anyway on the next day, because the game ends on the 7th day, or after the 7th day. After drawing the cards, sorry, these are in his hands, he has to refill the event market. He has to choose exactly 2 event cards which he wants to keep. For example, this one and this one. Discard the rest of the cards. They will never return to the game. And slide the 2 chosen events to the 0 slots of the market. Then take 4 cards from the event deck and fill up the market one by one, starting from the 1s to the 2s. And then the Soviet phase is done, and we can continue with the revolutionary phase. In the revolutionary phase, the second phase in each day, the revolutionary players take turns to perform actions. Regardless of the player count, the team will have 4 actions, which they will have to distribute between each other. If playing with 1 player, the revolutionary player gets 4 actions. If playing with 2 players, both players will get 2 actions. If playing with 3 players, the first player to take a turn gets 2 actions, the second one gets 1 action, and the third gets 1 action. And if 4 players playing, then each of them will get 1 action. Each day, the players may decide in which order they take their turns. Before taking an action, each player can move. Every player have 1 free movement and free movement step, and 1 step means that they go to an adjacent location, like that. Each other movement step, which is another adjacent location, will cost the players 1 revolutionary card, which they have in their hands. So these. Any revolutionary card is good for this. They have to discard it face up to do the movement. There's a special card called Transportation, which actually allows you to go anywhere on the board. It's pretty handy when you want to move, to make things cheaper. And then, when the player is done with the move, then he can perform an action. So, what are the actions a player can take? First is activate a fighter. When there's an inactive fighter on a location, for example, Maria Listes has an inactive marker on her, remove the inactive marker from the fighter, place it next to the player, and flip if there's another fighter on the board, on the location, flip it and place an inactive token on it. Now, Maria is active and can have the revolutionary players. If moving with a fighter, you can take 2 of them for free anywhere. And players can even switch fighters amongst them. So if blue player, for example, comes up with Maria, then the red player can then, in another turn, move around with Maria. So they can swap it. It's very important. The second action, which is the core of the game, because that will bring you closer to victory, is resolving an event. When you resolve an event, you have to be on the same location as an event card. All events have some resources on them, which you have to gather to resolve it. So, for example, the students' demands on University of Technology have 1 information and 3 food resources on it, and that's what you have to gather. So how to gather resources? First, you can use the fighters. If a fighter have the same icon as required on the event, you can use it. Sadly, Maria doesn't have any matching icons. And then, if you have cards in your hand, they have resource icons on the corners. So if blue players, for example, have these cards in his hand, these 5 cards, he can do the following. Let's have this one too. He takes 1 aid. This means that he has to choose 1 from these and use it as a food. Then this second aid he also uses as a food. The third one he also uses as a food. And the newspaper, which has 2 information on it, uses it as an information. So now he used 4 cards to resolve the event, and he have the matching icons. There's 1 excess information that's lost, sadly. Any card used for resolving an event, or actually used for any action, must be discarded face up in a revolutionary discard pile. If the player uses a fighter icon, the fighter is not lost. Its icons can be used again, anytime. Then, when the event is successfully resolved, consider the text effect on the reward section. The reward section is this green tick, which has the resources on it too. It says, at this case, that shift support towards Hungarian end. So the players get the support marker 1 closer to the Hungarian flag on the support track. As a reminder, you win the game if there's only 4 or less events on the board at the end of the game after the 7th day. So you want to get as many events off the board as possible in all turns. So when you're not resolving events, you can do a couple of other things. The third action you can choose is attack a militia. If the yellow player comes here, he had to play exactly 1 ammunition to kill the militia. For example, if he plays this pistol card, it has 1 ammunition, and the militia is killed. In 1 action, you can kill a maximum of 5 militias. And if you kill at least 3 in 1 action, then you will get a reward of 1 revolutionary card, which you can draw from the deck. The fourth action you can choose is to destroy a tank. These Soviet tanks are 3 Molotov cocktails from destruction. So if you play 3 Molotov cocktails on the same spot as a tank, you can destroy it. Molotov cocktails look like this, and of course some fighters also have Molotov icons on them. The tank is destroyed. You remove it from the board, and as a reward you get 2 morale. You shift the morale towards the Hungarian end 2 times. And there's, as the 5th action you can do, it's kind of a mix, you can use the card abilities. If a card ability, most of the revolutionary cards have card abilities on them, and if one of them says action, for example the first aid kit says that you can remove an injury from yourself or another player on your location, then you will spend an action of the 4 the team have. If the card does not say action, it means you can use the card in your turn without spending an action, and you can do it anytime. After doing an action, before doing, during movement, so really anytime. In your turn, but never outside your turn. There's also fighter abilities, which you can use. 3 types. One says once per turn. If it says once per turn, each player can use it once in their turn. It's a free action, so it does not cost an action. It doesn't spend one of the 4 actions. The second one says action on it. It means that the player has to spend an action, like on the cards. These can be used in an unlimited times, but it costs you the action, so technically you can't do it more than 4 times in a turn. And the last one says passive. Here's the passive one. This ability is continuously active. Let me give you the example. The action says, or the ability says, tanks do not automatically fire in this location. So wherever the fighter is, even if there is no player there, the tanks will not automatically fire. What's automatic fire? I'll get to that in a minute. So that's fighter and card abilities. The almost last option is to swap cards between each other. If 2 players are on the same spot, on the same location, the active player may give any number of cards to the other player, or may take any number of cards from the passive player. Now, of course, this is a cooperative game for them, so you have to agree on which card to take or to give. But there's also a hand limit you have to keep track of. Each player have a hand limit of 10 cards, so you can never have more than 10 cards in your hand as a result of any action. The last option you can do is draw a card. Take a card from the revolutionary deck. Of course, if you have 10 cards in your hand, you can't take this action. So that's 7 actions you can choose from. What else happens in this phase? The Soviet tanks are actually defending each location. It's called retaliation of Soviet tanks. And when a player does an action on the same spot as the tank fires on the player before doing the action. So, for example, if the blue player activates this fighter on the location, then the tank fires on the player. How you do it? You roll a dice, and if it's 1, 2, or 3, then the tank hits. If it's more than that, the tank does not hit. So I would roll the 6, it doesn't hit, so let's assume it does. I roll the 1. The hit can be distributed in 3 ways. First, the player who is there may take an injury. An injury token looks like this. Be very careful. If you reach 4 injuries or 5 injuries in a 1-player game, you will lose the game. All the revolutionary team together loses if 1 player is too injured. So injury is the first option. The second option is to sacrifice a fighter. Remove the fighter tile that is on the same location where the hit was taken, and the fighter is out of the game. The third option is to remove a barricade. It rarely happens, and I will tell you about barricades in a short while. Barricades have 1 point of 1 hit point, and they can also be removed. So that's how the tanks work. And then, okay, let's tell you a little about the barricades. The barricades can be built by the player. It's actually a card ability, which says build a barricade. I'll show it to you. It has a very elaborate ability. It says place a barricade token in your location, and then Soviet tanks, snipers and militia may not move out from it, so they're stuck. And Soviet tanks don't automatically fire. So the tank if there's a barricade, does not fire. However, since the tank fires, so if my action is, and building a barricade is an action, that I build this barricade, the Soviet tank fires before it, because Soviet tanks always fire before the action, but from then on, this barricade prevents tank fire. When all the players have finished their actions, all 4 of them, the revolutionary team draws cards. They have to check the morale track, and the number of it on which the marker is indicates how many cards the team draws as a whole. Now it is on 4, so the players, the 3 players, have to distribute these cards evenly amongst them, as evenly as possible actually, because right now they can't have an even number, so one player may have more than 1 card than the others this way. So this is a legal distribution. You cannot distribute it in a way that the difference is more than 1 card. So one player cannot have like 3 cards and the other one 1 and the last one 0. If the players are at their hand limit, so if one player is at hand limit and that's the reason they can't take the card, the hand limit is 10 cards, then those cards, those excess cards, can be distributed to other players. So actually this move, or this distribution, is legal if the 3rd player has no cards to take. He's at his hand limit. And then the distributed cards cannot be looked at when doing the distribution, only when they get it. And then this is the end of the phase.
The proletariat, now the red bourgeoisie, the murder, the torture, the terror and the famine, 50 years under the communist regime.
The 3rd phase in each game is the SPA, or State Protection Authority phase, and in the conflict rule set it's played as the following. You take the SPA cards which are in a face-up pool, and the Soviet player can play any number of cards from this pool to the discard. There are 4 cards the Soviet commander, can choose. First one is Place Militia. It says, place 2 militia at one of the following locations: Chepel, Sena Square, or HWPP headquarters. They are the reinforcement locations, and all of them has this red star on them. So let's assume the player plays this one. Let's place it here, in the discard, and place 2 militia, for example, on Chepel. This one's Chepel, where the yellow player is. The other he can choose from, first one is Move Sniper. He can choose 1 sniper unit, for example this one, and move it 1 space. Let's assume that he wants to move it more, so he plays 2 Move Snipers. So we can move the sniper once, twice, to here. Other option is Move Militia. When playing Move Militia, 3 militia units can be moved once, or 1 militia can be moved 3 times. So, for example, it's a legal option to move this militia once here, another time here, and this militia once here. If there's a barricade on a location, militia and snipers cannot move out from it, only into it. So, for example, if the sniper was moved and was moved into here, this is a legal move to move into a barricade, and then it's stuck and cannot move out. So a move militia was played, so it's played here, and as you notice, they are played in a discard. Oh, I have to play it a little bit up. This is placed in a discard queue. So the first one was Place Militia, over that is Move Sniper, Move Sniper, Move Militia. It's very important because when you retrieve cards, you have to keep the order. So let's finish playing the cards and then see what that order does. And finally, the final action is attack. It says, select a location with SPA troops in it, then roll 2 dice for hits. If strength is 9 or more, shift morale towards Soviet end. Okay, so first, let's roll for hits. And of course, let's play the attack card. So where do we hit? Well, this one seems pretty convenient for the Soviet player, so he rolls 2 dice for this location. The roll is 1 and 6. So what happens? For the smaller number is considered first. If the smaller rolled number is less than the total strength of units, then it's 1 hit. What's the total strength of units? The sniper is 3, the militia is 1, there, and there's 4 militias, so it's a total of 7 strength. Now, 1 is less than 7, so it's 1 hit. And if the sum of the 2 dice is smaller or equal than the strength of the SPA units, it's another hit. So what happened now? It's double hit, because both 1 and 7 is smaller or equal. How can you distribute a hit? As explained in the revolutionary phase, the player there can take 1 injury. He has to, well, keep it somewhere in front of him. And another injury can be taken for a hit. Alternatively, if, for example, there was a barricade, the barricade could be sacrificed for 1 hit. And if there was an active fighter, so for example, if this fighter was active, then this one could be sacrificed. So it's a legal move for this double hit, take 1 hit, 1 injury, and remove 1 fighter. And then there's the last bit on the card, which is not in effect right now, which says, if strength is 9 or more, shift morale towards Soviet end. So what happens? This is 7, so it's not 9. But let's assume that there was another sniper here, which is at strength of 10. Then the morale is reduced 1 on the track towards the Soviet end. This is how an attack card is played. And so why the discard Q? Well, in a turn, the Soviet player can either play cards in any number or retrieve all of them into the pool. But if he doesn't do that, these cards stick here. How can you retrieve the cards? Each turn, when the headline cards are played in the Soviet phase, the red ones, the red headline cards, have an SPA icon on them. For example, this Ontalopro orders arrest of the fascist mob says SPA1. So, if you play a red headline card for the action, for the text, then this SPA icon also takes effect. And you can retrieve 1 SPA card from the bottom of the queue. From the bottom. So, the order in which you place the card is the order you can retrieve them. So if the Soviet player plays enough SPA icons in the Soviet phase, he might not need to retrieve the cards and lose a whole day with it. The cards have an exact number. There's 2 attack cards, 3 move militia, or 2 move militia, 3 move snipers, and 1 place militia, and that's public. All the players, even the revolutionary ones, know which ones are available to play or not. And when the Soviets done with playing the cards, the phase ends. And that's the end of the phase. The SPA phase is also the end of the game. The end of the SPA phase is also the end of a day.
The price of freedom is what to me. The price of freedom is what to me.
So when does the game end? Each day consists of 3 phases: Soviet, Revolutionary, and SPA. And at the end of the day, the players must move the marker on the calendar 1 space towards the higher number. And this continues until the end of the 7th day, October 29th, and then they progress to evaluation and the end of the game. On October 13th, there was a ceasefire agreement between the Soviet and SPA troops and the revolutionaries, and relative peace came to the streets. So what happens in evaluation? First, it might happen that there's an event card on the board which has a penalty on it. Let's find one. For example, this multi-party government demanded on Kossuth Square have this red X on it which says a penalty. It says this event counts as 2 events at the end of game evaluation. So it actually says it's more events than it is. It's 2 events. There's another thing, for example, the battle says execute 1 SPA attack. It's pretty straightforward. The Soviet player chooses or the revolutionary players, depending on which game mode you play, choose a location and the SPA fire there. And also can threaten, so they can reduce morale if they're high enough in numbers. So these are here. So all these, if not resolved, stay on the board. And so what was the goal of the game when all these are done? To get less than 5 events on the board. So have 4, 3, 1, 2, or 0 on the board. Right now, for example, this is a win for the revolutionary players. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 events. Oh wait, this one says this event counts as 2 events at the end of game evaluation. So it's 5 events right now. So they lose the game. There's also 2 alternative endings to the game. Immediate victory to the Soviet player or immediate victory to the revolutionary players. If playing with Zukov ruleset, of course there's no Soviet players, so the revolutionary players immediately win. What are the 2 things this can happen? First, the revolutionary players immediately win if there is no militia and no tanks on the board at any time in the game, which means they've cleared the city of threats. The snipers do not count in this immediate victory. They are very hard to remove during the game. So this is a win for the revolutionary players. Immediate defeat for the revolutionaries and win for the Soviet side is if the morale is reduced to the skull at any time in the game. There's the last space in the morale track has a skull on it. It's the closest to the Soviet end. Also, immediate defeat for the revolutionary players if one player accumulates 4 injuries. Any player gets 4 injuries is dead, and the revolution, well, loses its initiative and they lose the game. If playing with one player, only one player, that single player can take 5 injuries. So this difficulty is reduced in this regard. And this is the end game evaluation, and then the game ends.